The Building Better Relationships Journal and Meditation. We created the Building Better Relationships Journal and Meditation so you can magnetize the better relationships you want and focus on the positive role that you have in creating a better life through your relationships. We are excited for you to discover the gold within you that can help you manifest the love we all crave. The Building Better Relationships Journal has coaching questions that help you listen to the truth of what you want and what helps you to be empowered in love. The Building Better Relationships meditation is designed to strengthen your heart's ability to be that change you wish to see in the world. Why not download it now and think of it as a gift to those you love? If you love journaling and meditation, this is for you. Welcome to Building Better Relationships at Home and at Work with Angela and Patty podcast. This is Patty, a leadership and work-life balance coach from Arizona, USA.
And this is Angela, love and relationship coach from Sydney, Australia. And we are building better relationships with you.
Sharing new perspectives on being heart-centered at home and at work.
So you can draw on your inner power to make your relationships and the world a better place to be around.
Welcome to Building Better Relationships at Home and at Work with Angela and Patty.
On this podcast episode, we have a special guest, Ronane, life coach, podcaster, and author.
Rebecca moved from London to a small village in Provence, France in 1995. She lives with her partner, Alain, and their dog, Myrtle. She worked in the travel industry for 30 years. However, a breast cancer diagnosis quickly followed by a job loss in 2012 gave her the opportunity to change direction, although she didn't feel it at the time.
A coaching course in 2014 opened the door to a different chapter in her life journey. Since training as a coach, she has set up her businesses Forward After 50 and Network Provence. This means that she has experienced that moving forward after 50 has the potential to be the most exciting part of your life.
A suggestion in 2021 that Rebecca should write a book was a little like looking down on someone else's life and ambitions, as it had never been on her agenda. The book was published in January of 2023 and is called Forward After 50, The Rising Reinventors. The book gives insight into ways of how we might be limiting ourselves in how we think and talk about aging. It's about changing your mindset around aging today. Start associating aging with generating instead of degenerating.
Rebecca, welcome. Please tell us and the listeners about you and why you became so passionate about living a great life forward after 50.
Well, thank you so much for having me and giving me such an amazing introduction. Forward after 50, yes. Well, why I became so passionate was life changed in such a positive way for me, in an unexpected way. And I guess that when I was 50 and I had a great party to celebrate actually reaching 50, because I thought that was even then when my life was pretty much had gone on as usual, I still considered it a great privilege to be that age. It seemed to be a really amazing milestone to celebrate. And then post that, and you mentioned I had several wake-up calls in terms of a health issue and also a job loss, which knocked me for six, as they say over here, because I didn't see it coming. And I yeah, I felt that I had reached a good point in my life, and I guess I didn't really see that much was going to change. And so I had to readjust in a big way. And of course, initially I thought it was all my doors were closing, where in fact they all started to open. And I guess that journey, because now I'm going on actually almost 67. So a lot of years have gone in between. And I want other women who are approaching 50 or over 50, over 60, it doesn't matter what age, to realize that, yes, sometimes we do experience those doors closing, seemingly especially after 50, but in fact, it might just be something positive is going to happen to you. So that's why I'm so passionate about it, because my life has become much more interesting over 50.
That's very interesting. Thank you. Rebecca, how can women celebrate and embrace turning 50?
Well, they can celebrate because they have reached that amazing milestone, first of all. And I think it's a period of time where you can start to use what I call your superpowers. Now, those superpowers you may not initially realize that you have. For example, I think that many of us reach 50 and we don't embrace our wisdom, or we don't give ourselves enough credit for the experiences and the wisdom that we actually have. And it's almost a perfect opportunity to start using that wisdom, because you may be in a position where, if you've had children, for example, they may have left home, not always necessarily, but you may have a little bit more freedom than you had previously. I mean, that's not always the case, but it could be. So it is an amazing period of time to start a different journey, if you want to, of course. But I think that definitely you don't need to be afraid to, just because you're getting, as they say, older. So it would be wonderful if, as a young person, or if you were approaching 50 or in your 40s, you were thinking, wow, I'm getting up to 50, it's going to be so amazing, rather than thinking, I don't like the sound of this at all. So to think in a very positive way rather than the alternative. And that's why I would like people to think that there's going to be a lot to celebrate.
And why do you think women fear aging?
Ooh, well, I think they do fear aging because we've been culturally educated to fear aging, and depending what culture you live in. But I think for us in the Western culture, that's very much how we feel. And so we associate aging with unwelcome changes, going towards the end of life, demise, and certainly the cosmetic industry will target women to repel age at all costs, which isn't very helpful. Everywhere you see anti-age coming at you. And yeah, I think that sinks in. And, when we start to get wrinkles or even gray hair or whatever, for some women, that's quite devastating. And because they've already got in their minds, this is really going to be not evolving in the way that they would like to. They would like to be perhaps more beautiful, and they don't associate wrinkles or gray hair with beauty. It's all that big emphasis on your exterior rather than your interior. And I actually, in my book, as you mentioned that I'd written a book, I had the privilege to speak to 10 women. And that was one of the questions that I asked them. And they almost all of them came back with some similar answers. And their three major fears after speaking to them were very much about that there was not enough time. So it felt like time was squeezing in on you. Also weight gain or physical or mental decline as well. And also being alone. And these fears, well, first of all, it's interesting because this fear of time, I think we have been educated to feel that, you know, after 50, we haven't got that long. But in fact, you know, the longevity has changed enormously. When we were younger, yes, indeed, in your 60s, in your 70s may be getting towards the end. But now, when you reach 50, you're probably looking at a good 30, maybe 40, and it's increasing all the time. So in fact, that time factor, you probably have a lot more time than you actually anticipated. And weight gain, of course, we can do lots of things to prepare ourselves for that, or to keep it off, or however you want to move on. So I think that often we go towards aging in a bit of a denial. And if we looked upon it in a positive way, then perhaps we could prepare for those things that we think are, you know, are normal and will happen to us, and we can't do anything about it, which is actually not true. We can start to do something to stop the weight gain, and also physical and mental decline. We can exercise, we can exercise our heads, we can exercise our bodies. You know, there are many, many things. And the same with loneliness, is to concentrate much more on perhaps on connection and being part of community, and not just allowing these things to creep in, to be prepared for them and to actually do something about it. So, you know, those are the kind of fears that I think are actually quite real for a lot of people, but I do think that they can be worked on.
Rebecca, I'm going to share a quote of yours that I really love.
Oh.
Choosing to live life on your terms might come across as selfishness. This is your time now. What makes you happy isn't selfish. It is vital. Please share more about this quote with us.
Well, yes. I mean, I think that, again, with our education and culture, we live in a lot of cultures these days, or have done, saying that, you know, you mustn't be selfish, you must give, you mustn't take. And however, sometimes we can lose our own identity, and we can lose how we need to look after ourselves. If you don't look after yourself, then you won't be able to look after other people. You know, it's the same as putting the mask on yourself before your child on a plane, you know, as you're told when you're going, you know, to take off with a plane. So I do think it's vital. And I think sometimes women over 50, they have been perhaps used to, as women do, looking after their families, looking after their children. that, and then some, the children may go and they're left to themselves and they don't quite know how to navigate that. And they're feeling perhaps uncomfortable by putting all their energy into what they want to do. And also to say no. I mean, we're not taught to say no, we're taught to say yes. And I think that saying no is important with your boundaries, and it can be life-saving in many ways. And you don't often people, they don't like you to change, so they get very they will accuse you of being selfish, because they would like you to stay as you are rather than making any changes. Especially, for example, I think a lot of women over 50, they want to travel, they may want to live in a different environment. I remember a very good friend of mine, she I thought was a perfect example of this. She once, someone said to her, if you could do anything, where would you want to go and live? If you could live anywhere? And she said Italy. And she thought about this question, and so much that she decided to go and do exactly that. And she was in her mid-60s. She'd never lived abroad. And she left her work and her family. Yeah, you can imagine she was considered to be probably very strange doing that and very selfish. But in fact, she never looked back, because she went and did some of her dreams and some of the experiences that she thought she would get in before she didn't have the opportunity, and she just did it. So I think it is very important to be interested in what you want to do.
How is mindset the secret weapon towards aging?
Well, yes, changing your mindset is vitally important. I remember when I had my breast cancer diagnosis, and also when I lost, which was quickly followed by a job loss. And then I felt, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? I still had to work. I still had to, live the life I wanted to live. And everyone started saying, oh, but you're over 50, and being very negative about it. And, you can easily go down that negative bias. I mean, that's what humans are drawn to. So changing your mindset is very important. It's also, it's not easy, because, again, I believe that our culture and education has taught us to consider aging to be something negative. I was very interested in articles that I've read. I think it's the United Nations, I think it was, who said that 1 in 3 people are ageist, and that means us as well. And it didn't matter whether you were over 60 or 20, you probably had an ageist attitude. And that can be, you have to become very aware of that to start to change it. So to look at your own ageist attitudes, perhaps the way you speak, the words we use, and to listen to how other people talk. I don't know if you have this saying in Australia or the States, people use it frequently in the UK. When you forget something, oh, are you having a senior moment?
Yes.
And
yes,
so,
yes,
so that association with forgetfulness, that then becomes with aging is something I think could be eliminated. But there are lots and lots of expressions we use which are quite ageist. And, you know, that also is that using age as an excuse to stop something rather than to start something. But you have to change your mindset. You have to be much more positive about aging to conquer all of those things so that you can move forward and, you know, have an amazing life.
And after 50, some women and men as well experience a drop in their physical energy. What do you think that suggests about how they could perceive their body differently to get the most joy or benefit in life?
Well, yes, an interesting question, because I think all of us at some point can have drops in energy. Yeah, I think this is one of the hardest questions to answer, actually. I thought about it and I thought, well, you know, if you are someone who has a lack of energy, perhaps it depends why you have that lack of energy. But if it is or means that you have to step back and perhaps change your lifestyle, you know, and prioritize your physical health and well-being to increase your energy levels, and also your sleep. For example, sleep is so important too. I just say a little story. I've just invested in a Whoop, you know, one of these monitors on your wrist that tells you how much sleep you're supposed to have and how your heart is beating and all of those kind of things. But I've become completely fascinated by the sleep section, because it will tell me sometimes you should go to bed today at, say, 8:45 this evening. And I think, my goodness, it's like having your mother on your wrist telling you to go to bed. But the thing is, you know, I think that we don't realize how much sleep we need depending on what we do during the day and how much energy we expand. And, you know, there is a lot of research into sleep at the moment. And I think particularly when you're getting older, let's say, and if you felt that you didn't have the energy to get through your day, that maybe it's your sleep, or maybe it's your nutrition, or maybe you should be doing some exercise that does re-energize you, or even your environment might not be helping. So I think it can be some things like that. But yeah, everyone is different. So it would be according to the person, the individual. I'm very keen on energy myself. That's one of my top core values. So yes, it is something that remains important for me, to have a high energy level. So I'm not going to let, hopefully, unless I don't feel very well or whatever, energy levels get low with me. I tried to turn that around swiftly.
And I think the environment and how you're living is a huge clue about, like, if your energy is dropping, what's happening in your environment. So talking about the environment, Rebecca, what have you learned about your life and moving forward in life from living in Provence in France? How does where we live influence our perception about life after 50?
Well, yes, I did look at this question with some interest too. And I guess I can speak from my point of view is that when I lived in London, for example, I have lived in quite a few different places, but for most of my adulthood, I lived in the city. And I would always say, I'm never going to leave the city. It energizes me. I'm never going to live in a village. But now I would probably say the opposite. I didn't have any big dreams to go and say, retire into a village or the countryside. I mean, living here is not something that I had on my agenda. By the way, many things in my life I didn't have on my agenda. So Alain is French and Dutch, and I am British. He didn't want to live in London. I didn't want to live in Amsterdam, where he was at the time. So we went for something completely different. And we're still here 27 years. So obviously it worked. But I think it works for me because of the countryside, the nature. I'm not sure if this is entirely true, but I have heard it that as you get older, then nature becomes much more important to you and more prominent in many ways. The colors, the quietness, the bird sounds, which is the opposite, but everything becomes a little bit more, it has more importance in your life. And definitely I live in the countryside, and I love the light, the sunsets. In Provence, where we are, it's very bright, it's very sunny. So I think that is very lifting, particularly if you've come from somewhere like England, where, you have a lot of cloudy, quite heavy skies. And I think for myself, that's certainly emotionally and mentally was, I didn't feel so great. I feel much better here because of that. And so I guess living here has happened at the right time. It might not be for everybody, of course, but I do think that your environment, as we mentioned before in the previous question, is very important for many, many factors, for your peace of mind and your health and your mental well-being too.
So Rebecca,
sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to mention, I think it's very important to be in an environment where you are also with people that you feel happy with as well, and where you're living your core values. Those are very important to me. And I mentioned energy, nature, connection, challenge, and learning. It's certainly a challenge to be a foreigner in another country, but I seem to thrive on that. So yeah.
Angela lived in France for a while too.
I seem to like foreign
Yeah.
cultures and challenges, but
Yeah, I know. I realize that challenge is a very important part of my life. And I think it is important to realize your core values, and there might be good keys to understanding yourself and why you like something or why you don't like something.
Rebecca, can you tell us more about your book, Forward After 50, the Rising Reinventors?
Well, my book, as you mentioned, it was a suggestion to write a book, and I had never thought about writing a book either. That wasn't on my agenda, but it was a challenge, so I rose to the challenge. And also it seemed a way to get the message across that aging is something that you could feel positive about. And if you feel positive about it, you could, realize your dreams, and you can reinvent yourself. I think reinvention is very much of what I've been doing in the last 10 years. And it's in the book, it started as a book about coaching after 50, but a lot of other things started to come into it, about how to be aware of ageism, how to be appreciating our own wisdom, how to use that, and how to have our best lives after 50, and to realize that, we do have a lot more years normally, and therefore those years are a great opportunity to do many more wonderful things for yourself, and for, if you want to contribute to the world as well by taking on a new career, for example. So the book has come out now, and what's been so interesting by many of the reviews is that women have said, oh, I wish I'd read this when I was 50. So I do think it does have a very positive effect, and inspires people to have a great life after 50, or to give themselves a chance to do that.
Wonderful. Great. So coming to one of my favorite topics, people pleasing. Why is people pleasing such a big problem after 50? And what can change after 50 around people pleasing?
I think people pleasing, well, that's something that I didn't really become aware of till after 50. Actually, till I went into the coaching world, I didn't even realize, about people pleasing and how important it is to realize when you're doing that, and how to perhaps avoid it, depending on what you want. But I think for women over 50, as I've mentioned before, they might want to travel. They often find that they're in the position like I was, wanting a new job. They might want a new environment. However, they may be very worried that they're abandoning their children, their grandchildren, and their older parents as well. I mean, this is something quite for a lot of people. For myself, for example, I have a mother that I care for every day. She's 92. So, but I tell her frequently that if I put myself first, then I will be perfect for her. So I make it very clear my boundaries with her. And I think if you communicate with what you want, then you can probably do what you need to do and help other people in a much more constructive way. So yeah, and don't let other people's judgment get in your way, because they do want you to stay as you are, because it's to their advantage.
I love that about the boundaries, setting those boundaries. And once you do, and people will start understanding why you're putting them up and things like that, like with your mom, for self-care reasons, and to better communicate with her and love her more, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's another subject about older women and older men caring for their families.
Yes,
because it is something that we can all do with a lot of support with.
that could be your next book,
It might be.
So,
Well,
yeah. Rebecca, how can our listeners find you or contact you about your products, services, your book, and events and workshops? Because you do a lot of things that you didn't even talk about in this interview.
no, I didn't. Oh well.
Your
The
podcast.
best place, yes, and my podcast. So the best place for people to find me is probably on my website, and that's rebeccaronane.com/after50. I also have a Facebook page /after50, and I'm on Instagram under my name, Rebecca Ronane. My two podcasts, because I didn't mention really Network Provence, which is a networking organization I created here down in Provence for women, and it's grown quite enormously. Again, that was something I didn't really have on my agenda, and it was a suggestion by the same person who suggested the book, by the way. I seem to say, oh yes, and then go for the challenge. But
was that your business coach?
Oh, it was Ruby Maguire. So that podcast it's a little bit sleepy at the moment, I would say. But the main reason behind that is to interview men and women who are doing awesome things here in this region, in Provence. But my main podcast is /After50, and it's about all the things that we've been talking about reinvention, about positive aging, actually everything to do with going forward after 50. I hope to be doing a retreat later on in the year. Don't know yet, but that will be a /After50, and webinars coming up about reinvention as well. And yeah, my book, /After50, The Rising Reinventors, can be purchased on most online bookstores.
It's an interesting birthday present for those coming to 50. That's a great idea.
It is a great idea.
And is there anything else you'd like to share with the listeners?
Well, I just hope that people will continue to be positive about aging. If you've never thought of it that way, yes, please start to think of aging in a positive way. And it is a time to start rather than stop. And, you know, if you don't reframe the way you think about aging, then particularly in the minds of women, you may limit yourself. And that seems such a shame, because you probably have many years to actually discover or rediscover many facets of life that perhaps you haven't already experienced.
Well, thank you so much, Rebecca, for joining us here today in our podcast. It was really great learning more about aging. And being over 50, my life has changed in so many positive ways. And I just love your podcast as well, and everything that you're doing to help women over the age of 50.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
For the opportunity.
Yes, we love having you here. Thank you so much for listening. Please follow us and share the podcast with others, and check out Rebecca's website, www.rebeccaronane.com, and her /After50 book. The links will be in the show notes.
Thank you for listening to Building Better Relationships with Angela and Patty. Send us a message and please like or share the podcast or donate with the Anchor donate button. We really value your feedback.